Yeah, actions. So turning that financial plan into actions. You want from what you've described, and Louise, if you're, I don't know how advanced any plans you might have are, but this will all be relevant because you will be producing them. But
I'm pleased with my 14 months, and now I might have to sign off now and go and start my 5-year. I'm going to do a 10.
No.
I can't be beaten. I'm going to do a 10-year, Sally. I'm doing 10 years.
You can predict that I'm retired by 10 years. I've sold. I'm retired. That's my plan.
Absolutely. That sounds like a perfect plan. But why 10 years? Why not in 5?
Who, me?
No, Sally. Why not retire in 5?
Oh no, my plan is 5. Don't worry.
That's good. Okay.
I have my aspirational is 5. My reality is probably 10.
Right. So the great thing about understanding the contribution that a new client makes to your bottom line is that then feeds into your targets for your sales and marketing activity, so that you can understand. So I know in my business that to achieve the growth that I want, I need to be having 5 conversations with business owners every week. That turns into 20 conversations over the month. And I know that if I can do that, that will generally lead to 2 clients a month. So having that understanding what the contribution is of your individual clients to the bottom line means you can then start to be more detailed about your marketing activity. You say, right, I know that if I've got to put on this amount of money in the business on the bottom line, this is how many new clients I need to bring in. And also don't forget client retention, because a lot of people focus on new business development and don't perhaps give their clients the sort of the TLC that sometimes they need to ensure retention. But once you've worked out what the impact of a new client is, you can then go back and as I've just described, you can say, fine, I know that I need to sign this number of new clients in 1 month to meet my targets. In order to sign 1 new client, do either of you know how many conversations, how many meetings you need to have with prospects to sign that 1 client?
Not yet.
Right. No. Okay. So you need to be measuring. So I'm assuming that you don't have hundreds of prospects coming in every week. So it's probably fairly straightforward. So you need to be recording 4 things to understand how your marketing activity is working. Those 4 things are: how did the client, or how did the prospect hear about you? So how did they find out about you? Was it a referral? Was it through networking? Was it from something you've been posting on LinkedIn or Facebook, or whatever other marketing activity you're using? But record how they heard about you. If it was a referral, then obviously you need to go back and thank the person who referred them to you. And if they become a client, you want to give that person, something worthwhile, because they'll do it again. If you give them a nice bottle of wine, a bunch of flowers, box of chocolates, whatever you think is appropriate, they'll do it again. So how do they find out about you? What are they interested in? So assuming that you have more than 1 service, and you possibly have different price points as well, which is a great idea, because if you have price points, they don't have to go elsewhere to get comparisons. So what are they interested in? What's it worth to you? What's that inquiry potentially worth to you if they were to become a client? And then finally record whether they became a client or not. And if you can do that, you will then know which of your marketing activities is generating the most prospects for you, the most leads. You'll know which marketing activity generates the leads that have the highest value to you. You'll know which marketing activity generates the leads that are most likely to convert, because you'll see what the conversion rate is as well. And so with that information, you can now start to work out, well, how many prospects do I need to actually have conversations with in order for them to become a client and to make that contribution to the revenue line, which is going to feed through to the bottom line.
Justin, can I just ask on that particular point?
Yes.
And I don't know if Louise is suffering or has the same issue, that at the moment, I think my biggest challenge is that I'm doing a lot of networking.
Yeah.
And whilst and I'm kind of getting the brand out there in terms of what it is. So I have clients, I've got some clients, and I know they've come through distress purchasing in that sense of, you know, I've got a problem, I need some help, because I do HR consulting. At the moment, I'm not seeing, and I don't know whether that's just about trust, because I think business is built on trust and knowing you. And if they know you, then they'll start connecting with you. So at the moment, I know where all my connections have come from, and probably 99% of it is networking. And I've got one client that came through an internet search, Google search. So building that out is really hard, because at the moment I don't want to stop things, because it's kind of like, well, there's no value, I'm not seeing a return on it. So at what point do you think you would make that genuine decision to say, actually, do you know what, there's no point in investing in that, because it's not really where you're getting that return? So as an example, I've put an advert in the Chamber of Commerce magazine for this quarter. I'm not convinced it's going to generate leads at this moment, but it's going to make brand awareness. So when somebody's in a situation, I'm hoping that it does now I'll either Google it, I'll link in it, or I'll find a connection that way. So what's your experience, and what would you advise in terms of that?
Okay, it's a tricky one, because, as I'm sure you've heard before, one of the essential components of a marketing plan is consistency. You have to be consistent, and networking is an absolute classic example of that. A lot of people think, oh, I'll go to a networking event, they go around, they see people, they go away, and they think, oh, I've done it. Well, no, you haven't, because as you were saying, Sally, it's all about knowing, liking, and trusting. And people will not trust you sufficiently until they've actually got to know you. And you might have to meet them 4 or 5 or 6 times at a networking event before they really start to trust you and like you. So consistency is key. So that's why that little process of recording where all your inquiries come from is so important, because it may be that in 5 months' time you get an inquiry from somebody and they say, oh, I saw an ad in the Chamber of Commerce last year. But if you're not recording it, you won't know. But different tactics have different time frames. So networking is good. Networking is a long-term is a long-term strategy, but it can bring immediate impact as well, because you just might meet somebody who has a need right there and then for HR advice. So whatever it is you're doing, you've got to be consistent about it. And so, you know, networking is great, Chamber of Commerce is great, but actually, where people are these days is social media. So you need to be posting on LinkedIn, you need a Facebook page, and you need to be posting minimum of 3 times a week. And don't make it all about the business, but that will help to get you known. So I've been doing business coaching now for 3 years. For the first time ever, at the beginning of this year, I had a message on LinkedIn from somebody I've known for a long time. In fact, he's my vet, saying, I think we need to talk. And we've been connected on LinkedIn, I don't know, for probably 8 or 9 years, if not longer. And he just, and he's a client of mine now, and we're working to build his practice. But that's a long-term strategy. But if you're not top of mind, people are not going to remember to get in touch with you when they come across the need. And that's why consistency is so important. Consistency in both your messaging So what it is that you're really good at, what you want to be known for, because it's very hard in service industries to create a USP, a unique service proposition, because it's hard to be unique. So you don't have to be unique. What all you need to do is to identify the thing for which you want to be known, and this is a thing that matters to your clients. That's the reason why they buy you, and you talk about that, because if you talk about it all the time consistently, you will own that proposition. You will come to be associated with it. I don't know whether both of you are old enough to associate Volvo with safety. It's the analogy I use, but I can remember looking through colour supplements as a young boy, and all the Volvo ads were always about safety. They weren't necessarily any safer than a similar sized car at a similar price range, but that was all they talked about for 40 years. And so their cars were known, Volvo was safe. If you wanted a safe car, you bought a Volvo. And you can do the same thing with your own business. Identify what that USP, what that thing is that you want to be known for, the outcome you want to be associated with achieving for your clients, and then just focus your activity on continually communicating that through all the different things. So I'm afraid there isn't a simple answer to your question, Sally. You will only really know if you measure where your leads are coming from.
Yeah.
And I think you'll get a slight gut feel as well about whether the Chamber of Commerce is the right place. To be honest, my gut feel is you might get something from it, but I think there are probably other areas where people spend more time, which might be more productive.
Yeah, I think I've been in the networking sort of space. It's working out where people that are likely to buy the services appear. So it's making sure, because there were some networking groups that were single operators who wanted to be safe. Yep. And it was kind of, that's not an environment in which will serve my business well. And therefore, and the Chamber run regular events and business awards and things like that, community wise.
Yeah. Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sally. Just a very quick thought. Yeah. You've got to be ruthless with networking. There are so many networking groups out there now. Identify the ones where you genuinely think they either have the potential to become a client or they know the businesses that would. But sorry, I have forgotten the point I was going to make to you. What was it? And I can't remember.
You were saying that you need to be ruthless when it comes to networking.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, sorry. It was about events. Yes. You don't just have to go to networking events. So, for example, in my area, I've got Silverstone, the top end of my sort of Buckinghamshire. There are loads of events, and I've got this thing called the Westcott Venture Park, which is a real hub of space technology. They organise events for business owners. They're not networking events, but they're events that business owners are going to be at. Yeah. People who own proper businesses. So the sort of people. So don't just go to networking. Look at all the events that you could go to that are within your area. Go where the business owners are.
Yeah. Yeah, I have been to some very boring events.
You might have to go to some boring events. It might be, I don't know, the window cleaners, well, not the window cleaners convention, but yeah.
They employ a lot of people.
they might do, yeah. So
but I get the point, that there's.
The thing is, until you've done it consistently, it's very hard to know whether it works or not, and that's why you must be recording the outcome of your activity so you can see what's working for you. Yeah. Louise, just a quick question for you then just for both of you, on budgets. I said I'd come back to that topic. Budgets are absolutely key because, there are three things that in basic financial terms, there are three things you must have in the business. The first one is a P&L. So you need to know what your profit and loss account is each month. But the P&L only tells you what's going on in theory. In theory, you made this much money, you had this much money coming in, you spent so much on delivering your products and services, your overheads were X, and what's left at the bottom is your profit. But how often does that figure tally with what's actually in your bank account? So P&L is essential because it allows you to look out for trends, for things that don't look right. But actually, possibly more important than the P&L are the cash flow forecast and the budget. So the budget is if everything goes according to plan, this is how much money I'm actually going to make. So when you budget out, all you're doing is you're taking your P&L, because that's where all the numbers are. The budget is just an extended P&L over a 12-month period or 18-month, or whatever you want to make it. And the budget says, this is if I bring in this much revenue, this is what's going to happen to the business, because you know what your your direct costs are. As an average, you can apply that margin percentage going forward. You know what your overheads are because you're already paying them. They're not going to change dramatically. Maybe if you have to change premises or if you employ a new member of staff, there'll be a change in your overheads, but they tend to be fairly constant, allowing for inflation. So the budget is the opportunity for you to play around with the numbers and say, well, actually, how much profit do I want to take out of the business? How much money do I need to have coming in order to generate that amount of profit? What else do I need to allow for? You know, I've got my corporation tax, etc., my VAT. And you check the budget against the P&L each month. So you know what you want to achieve in a month. You know how much money you want coming in. So you can then go back to your P&L and say, okay, what actually happened in that month? How much money did we have coming in? Were the overheads correct? How much has fed through to the bottom line? But because the way businesses work, that is not a reflection of what's necessarily in your bank account, which is why the cash flow forecast is so important. Because you might have some big overheads. You might suddenly have to go out and buy something expensive. If you're actually manufacturing things, you have to buy the raw materials in order to be able to make the products before you sell them. So so all businesses operate with a cash gap. There is a gap between the selling your products generally, unless you demand 100% up front. There is a gap between selling your product and receiving the money in, and during that period, you've still got costs and overheads to cover, etc. So the cash flow forecast is the ultimate reality of what's going on in the business. It tells you how much you're going to have in the coming in, for example, next week or the week after or next month, depending on how accurately you can assess those things, and you know what you owe other people. What are your costs that are going out? And so have those three things in place. They are the most important things. Your P&L that you then compare to your budget. The budget is where you want to be, and the cash flow forecast is the reality of what's actually coming into your account and what's going out of it, and it gives you advanced warning of potential problems, i.e., not enough cash coming in to cover all the debtors that you might have that need to, or the creditors rather, that you need to be paying. So that would be my my quick summary on how to make financials work for you. If you can have those three things in place, you'll never be taken unawares, and you'll understand what your business is doing. And then we mentioned KPIs earlier, and clearly you can identify numbers within your cash flow, within your P&L, etc., which are indicative of how things are going, and you can look at those numbers regularly. So, sorry, I'm talking. What are your goals then? What are your actions for the coming week? Is there anything that sort of has stood out that you feel you need to be actioning?
My cash flow.
Right.
Done my P&L, I've done a budget, but I haven't done my cash flow.
Okay, about the cash flow, I'm going to upload a template and also a video from one of the coaches explaining how to fill that template. Okay.
You're brilliant.
As soon as I find it, because I know I have it. As soon as I upload it, I will let you know. That's the one.
Okay, so yeah, here's the standard action coach cash flow forecast.
Excellent.
It's very simple. You just make a note of what money's going out. I prefer to put what money's coming in at the top. Actually, it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
and then underneath it, you can see we've got cash coming in. This one is quite detailed. It doesn't always have to be this detailed. Sometimes, you know, your overheads are fairly consistent, but the key thing is to understand who your potential clients are. You know, and you can do something called a weighted cash flow forecast as well. So this cash flow forecast is really only recording people who have become clients of yours. So you've got down here, you know, who's going to pay me this amount of money in this week. But you can have a weighted cash flow forecast. So you can say, right, well, actually, I've got proposals. I'm in conversation with these people about these things. And if it comes through, it's going to be worth £10,000. But at the moment, the likelihood of it actually happening is probably only 50%. So you weight it by 50%. So actually, it can go into your cash flow forecast, but it only goes in as 5,000, not 10,000. And you may want to keep that separate from your proper cash flow forecast, or you may want to build the two in. But don't forget to include in your cash flow forecast in some form or other the prospects who are outstanding, the businesses who you are talking to who haven't confirmed that they want to buy from you yet, but where you have a prospect. I used to always use either 30%, 60%, or 90%. My weightings. I didn't muck around with lots of different ones. So 30%, we were having a conversation, really didn't know whether we were likely to get it or not. 60%, yep, things were looking positive. 90%, pretty well certain that it's going to come in. And then 100% once they've signed the contract or given you the go ahead. Right. And so Louise, what are your tasks? What are your actions for the next week? What springs to mind?
What springs to mind is the budget. I have done a cash flow, but it needs a revision. It was done over 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So, and also, I think, I don't know whether it's timely, but to diary monthly a finance day to go through the P&L, the cash flow, and the budget. Going what we were saying about consistency, just to see and get into a rhythm and a routine of checking that to see whether it is working. And then I suppose from there you are collecting information to know what to do with your marketing and what sales processes that you want to put in place.
Yeah, because once you understand what you need to be bringing in, it gives your marketing and sales activity much more relevance, because you're now really thinking about, okay, well, how many people have I got to get as a lead in this month in order to meet the budget that I've set out. Yeah. Great. And you've raised a very good point there, Louise, which is about effectively having a board meeting with yourself. If you're the only person in the business, but still get into that discipline of sitting down and reviewing the numbers regularly. And the danger for some people is that if the numbers aren't looking good, they'd rather not do that. But that's putting your head in the sand. So yes, if you can set up on a monthly basis an hour or so where you're going to sit down and you're actually going to look at the numbers, update the cash flow forecast. I would recommend that you do that at least once a month, because things change, and you might have either a big new client arriving, or you might have a current client perhaps who's paying you recurring revenue who actually no longer works with you. So you've got to make allowance for that, etc. Yeah. Good. Right, so it sounds as though you both got plenty to be doing. I'm not going to give you any more to get on with, because I think you've got enough. Any other questions? Any final points before we finish?
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Well, hopefully I'll see you again on one of these events. And yeah, good luck with your plans and your businesses.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Okay,
your
I'm
time.
sorry we've slightly overrun. That's my fault.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen.
Right.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you,
Have
everyone.
a
See you
rest of
then.
your afternoon.
Take
Bye.
care. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.